Great. We'll just let the recording catch up here real quick. All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the Passenger Tramway Board meeting for January 30th, 2025. It's 1:04 p.m. here at the Vermont Department of Labor and online. Just a quick rundown of today's agenda. After introductions, we'll have an approval of the minutes. We'll talk about a couple of variances, one from Stratton Mountain and another from TowPro lifts. And then Mike will give us an update on winter inspections, as well as maybe what the summer holds or what construction might look like if he's got any insight. Then we'll talk about the future meetings, next meeting, and then any other business or public comment. And that'll wrap us up. So maybe a slightly shorter agenda than usual, but as history tells us anything, we may use the full hour and a half. So we will wait and see. With that, if we could just do quick introductions, let me see if I can see everybody on my screen. I can't on the screen in front of me. So let's do here in the room. Again, Mike Harrington, I'm the Commissioner for the Vermont Department of Labor. Dirk.
Dirk Anderson, Director of Workers' Compensation and Safety for the Department of Labor.
Mike Nellis, Passenger Tramway Supervisor.
Tom Buchanan, Tramway Board Member.
Jeff Hamill, goes Fire Service Department Administrator.
Great. And then I'm just going to go through people online as I see them. Alicia.
Yes, with the Vermont Ski Areas Association.
Keatlin.
Keatlin Shaw from Souther's Notch, and I also have Mike McAdoo with me as well.
Fred. Craig Panarisi.
Yeah, Craig Panarisi, VP of Ops at Stratton, here for the Snow Go variants. Thanks.
Great. Eb Kinney.
Eb Kinney, Okemo Mountain.
John Hammond.
John Hammond, President Sugarbush.
Joe Thibodeau.
Joseph Demidow, Okemo Mountain Resort.
Karen Richardson.
Administrator, Mountain Operations, Sugarbush Resort.
Kirsten.
Kirsten Erickson, Tram Board Member, Killington.
Matt Lillard.
Matt Lillard, General Manager, Matter Glen.
Meredith.
Hi, I work with maintenance and ops at Stratton Mountain.
Mike.
Michael Terraconi, public member of the Tramway Board.
Molly.
Afternoon, everyone. Molly Mahar, Vermont Ski Areas Association.
Ryan.
Ryan LeBoy with Mountain Guard.
Scott.
Scott Reeves, Tramway Board Member, Stowe Mountain Resort.
Sean.
Sean Kelly, with Killington Lift Maintenance.
Nelia.
Nelia Charaski, Board Secretary.
And Will.
Will Mayo, TowPro Lifts.
Thank you. That's all I have on my screen, but is there anybody that I missed? Okay, hearing none, let's talk about the minutes from our last meeting, which would have been May 9th.
Actually,
go ahead.
That's a mistake. Which Tom caught. What was the date of the meeting, Tom?
August 22nd.
Thank you.
So the meeting minutes from August 22nd. I know, Tom, I think you sent around some edits. So if you want to run through those, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go through them in a little more detail than I was planning to because we have so many visitors today. I'd like to propose a number of amendments and I'll list them off. The first one is that the meeting was on August 22nd. The minutes show it was August 23rd. So I would like the minutes to reflect that it was on August 22nd. I'd like all minutes in the future to be marked or watermarked as draft. This one was not. So the draft sits on the web with a file name saying it was final. Thus, I'd like the amended minutes to say they are adopted on January 30, 2025 to distinguish them from prior minutes that have been released. A comment, it's not so much an amendment for this set of minutes. We had several participants in our last meeting. We didn't catch their names. In some cases, we just put first initial and last name. In some cases, we left off the name entirely. I'd like us to spell out full names whenever we can, particularly for visitors. If people are going to take the time to come and join us, I'd like to acknowledge their presence with full name. So that would be a future thing. Fourth comment, we should try to identify, I thought you said that we should try to identify. And then there was a paragraph that I wanted to replace having to do with the explanation of the budget. And this gets technical. I think board members have it. I'd just like to explain it in more detail than it is on the web. So that's my philosophy there. I guess I should open it up to other board members if there are concerns or whatever.
I would add, thank you for your diligence and your thoroughness of looking at the minutes.
Thanks, Scott. Talia, do you understand the corrections I'm asking for?
I think I have your email. As soon as they're approved, I can take it from there.
Okay.
I'm just seeing if there's any other comments at this point. And then we can certainly have, again, if the board wants to adopt all of Tom's requests or recommendations, we can certainly do that. If there's any question, concern, or anything we don't want to adopt, we just need to identify what that is. Great, hearing none. Can I have a motion then to approve the minutes with the changes, corrections, and suggestions?
I'll make a
The
motion.
motion by great motion by Tom, second by Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I don't think so. Great. So motion carries. We'll make those edits. Next up, we have a couple of different variance requests. Stratton Mountain is first on my list. And Mike, typically we might look to you to just give us the high level wave tops of the variance, and then we'll look to Stratton Mountain.
Okay. Stratton Mountain came to us to use look for a variance for using snow bikes on one of the 6-pack lifts and slider, which is a conveyor. So they sent a letter in. We went through the process of on-site inspection on the slider, which is the first time we've done bikes on a conveyor, which actually works pretty good. Also part of the variance, they did ski patrol demo, lowering a bike down. What we found is we lowered a bike down first, and then go back for the people. So I think there's some pictures in your package that went out, just showing the demonstration. So everything went really good. I think we did one demonstration. Meredith can talk about that, is how many bikes per chair. That's every ski area seems to have their own process. If they want a bike and a skier, and I think what Meredith, you ended up going 3 bikes, no public, right? I believe that's.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. So basically, they've been through the whole process. Everything went really good. So, I don't know if Stratton wants to add a little to that.
Yeah, we did a couple tours. So this is new, obviously, this season, and we are only allowing them with an instructor on, as Mike mentioned, one of the carpets, which is actually shared with the tubing park as well. And the 6-pack that's closest to that carpet is where they are limited to. So as a lesson progresses and they make their way from the carpet, they would run over to Sunrise and ride on that. No more than 3 bikes per chair. And yeah, we are not loading the public with those bikes, just to be on the safe side to avoid any incidents. And it's been working well. Yeah, it's been good so far.
One thing we did with the leashes, we did a lot of study of them. Killington was one of the first ones, shortening that up. At first, they were really long, and what we were worried about, if a bike fell out, that it could actually pull a person out of the chair. So we've shortened that up, and that seems to work pretty good, so.
Breakaway or not?
No. It clips to the person.
They don't pull people out.
No, it's short, so, yeah, the other ones were like 10 or 12 feet long, where it could pick up enough speed to pull a person out, so. So we've dealt with that. Other than that, I think it's pretty well, able to vote on it, talk about.
I have questions, and they're kind of curiosity questions, not like I'd like to see this approved. I'm not proposing it at all. Why are we here for a variance when this can be approved by the department itself?
Well, we did a provisional approval based on Mike's inspection. The board rules as amended still require approval of the board. I believe they do. Yeah. Commissioner and I were looking at this earlier.
I had the same question, because I thought when we had talked, we had adjusted that so that they could be approved by the department. I don't necessarily think it's bad form to have them eventually approved by the board and given provisional approval. I think I don't want to speak for Mike, but in all fairness to Mike too, it also provides him some cover to make sure that he's not making the sole decision on variances and feeling like he's left hanging out to dry. So again, it doesn't hold the mountain up. We can do provisional approval and then just make sure the board is okay with it when it comes around. That makes sense for people. I thought we had, but when I went back and Dirk and I both looked at the rules, there was a lot of talk about it, but we couldn't find anywhere where we had formally changed them so it was at the sole discretion of that they could be done administratively. But I had the same recollection as you. So.
I'm disappointed because I really wanted to make it super easy for the resorts so they wouldn't even have to come to us.
I think we can certainly talk about that in turn. I don't remember there being any major objection to that at the board. So I don't know if it just didn't get copied over, but we could easily go through that process again.
I think we looked at, there's so many devices, I get 3 or 4 different ones every year. So I think it was a way that in Vermont, we could kind of see what's coming and kind of control it a little bit. I think that was the whole thought behind it, because there's new devices every day.
Yeah.
So
I think we had said originally that it was, if we had already given variance to one mountain and if it was, all things were like and equal, then we could get. So we can try to streamline that and capture. I think the other thing we could do is, as a board, we could give a provisional approval. We could just make sure they're seen by the board and and okayed without having the mountain come. And then if there are questions or concerns, we could have the mountain come. Again, just to make it super easy for the mountain.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, so that was my first question. I guess I have an answer for that. Next question has to do with what kinds of snow bikes we're talking about. Variants we're being asked to include snow bikes. When I go online, SnowGo is the brand that I think Stratton is using. Is that correct, Stratton?
That is correct.
Yeah. But there are other things. There's a Brenter brand and other kinds of brands that don't have the thing that locks on the seat as well. There are also regular bikes with really fat tires that are sold as snow bikes. And there are motorcycle-like devices with treads that are sold as snow bikes. So I want to make sure that we're limiting this variance to SnowGo and similar type bikes, with just SnowGo, if that's what Stratton wants.
No, that was the whole thing behind the variance, to identify each device. Exactly, because like I say, some, they ride, some of your foot passengers, so, if you're considered a foot passenger, it's on a fixed grip, you're limited to 250 feet a minute, load and unload. And that's, skiers, once they hear that, usually they don't want to slow the lift down top and bottom. So, detachables, it's no problem. It's the fixed grips where, the 250 limit comes into play. So
is Stratton okay with SnowGo as a limitation on this, or do you want it to be more than that?
But yeah, I was just gonna add the same thing, because we don't clearly articulate here what we're approving, other than snow bike as a general term, so.
Yeah, as it stands, we have a contract with SnowGo, the brand, so we are planning to just stick with that specific brand for the time being.
And do you have a variance for snow bikes on other lifts, or is it only this lift right now?
Only these two lifts, the one surface lift and the 1 6-pack detach.
Okay. And will people with SnowGo bikes be able to use them on their own after they take lessons?
That is not currently the plan. They must be actively in a lesson. And I believe it's a 2 or 3 hour lesson. There's 2 offerings each day.
Is that something you might want to change later on, do you think?
I would imagine as the business grows that we would, but we're not quite there yet.
So my concern is that we shouldn't, if you want the ability to use these bikes elsewhere, we shouldn't, and independently, we probably shouldn't limit the variance to only lesson time. That makes sense?
yeah, I guess it's kind of something, what the skier really wants to do. Now it's limited, could be in another next year, full blown.
Does anything change, Mike? At this point, it's just lessons, but if they said we want a variance to do the exact same thing, but outside of a lesson, does that change our feeling on this? So to Tom's point, right, to prevent them from coming
back, right?
Yeah. The only place where that becomes an issue for me is if individuals are using these on their own, using those 2 lifts at the top of Sunrise, you have an option to move elsewhere on the mountain. That would put the bikes in places with other lifts. I just want to make sure that Stratton, if they send these things out independently, understands that. I think other resorts just let them on their own, don't they?
Now, the one thing with the variants, we've been making them, okay, tell us what lifts you want them on.
Right, but other resorts will allow them as individual use. So it'll
Yeah, I see.
somebody can just ride it wherever they want.
Right, I got you.
As long as they're legal on each lift.
Yeah.
I think a little more history, I was just remembering why we went to the variances on this different devices, because some ski areas wanted them, some didn't. So this was a way to kind of, when people come to Vermont, okay, this area allows this one allows that, but it was there were ski areas that didn't want them at all, which is, that's up to them.
Sure.
But that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, sure.
To your point, I don't necessarily need a motion, but is there any concern from board members about approving this as also, again, it's up to the mountain how they want to implement it, but approving it for both during lesson and out of lesson, but only on these two authorized lifts? Any concern there?
Well, I would ask Mike, is there any concern on that? I mean, at the end of the day, it's my feeling if we approve it for the lift, it's up to the resort to put their own restrictions on it, however they so choose. It's only our job to say, we're good with it on the lift. You know, where people go with it after that is entirely, we have no terrain authority or anything like that. We only worry about loading and unloading the lift. So,
Correct.
you know, Mike, do you see an issue if these people were unsupervised by an instructor? But again, that's the liability that the mountain takes on. We're just saying,
Right.
yeah, you can use these devices. We don't care when you use them. You can use them, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't have no problem with that. Yeah. I know
Would there-
originally when we go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask if there would be any requirement for training or, loading and unloading training if you were to come in outside of a lesson. In a lesson, it
mean,
ensures that the people learn.
Little history too, when we first started doing this with Killington, we did a lot of experimenting with different devices and everything. And what they did to kind of control it right off the bat, you had to rent the bike from them, rent the boots, and take a safety video. So that's how it all started. And that, I don't think you're doing that anymore, but that's how it originally started, just so they could see how it was gonna operate on their mountain. The lift part was our part, which was fine, but they wanted to control the mountain too, so that was up to them.
Yeah, and I would say it's much like the ANSI code, that it's the individual's responsibility to understand how to load and unload, and what the resort wants to put in place for educating them in that is up to them. But if you look at, writing a lift code, it says that the individual will understand that, not that we have to teach that individual.
Right.
So we can either continue conversation or I'll ask for a motion.
Did we decide that it's okay to approve this without an instructor? So are we?
I mean, I didn't hear any concern from the board, so if somebody wants to just make a motion that, we'll approve the variance for supervised and unsupervised use.
Do we have a variance already? Is there a version of the variance that exists?
Stratton has a letter from
Right.
us basically acknowledging Mike's review, granting them provisional variance dependent on approval by the board.
And does it, in the letter, does it speak to supervised or unsupervised?
No, it does not.
Okay, so we could just, again.
Yeah.
Prove as
Our intent
as
would
it's
be-
stated in the letter.
Right. Just use these two lifts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what we've done with other areas.
I will make a
Yes.
motion to that verbiage.
I'll second.
I'll second, any further discussion? We got a motion in a second, but any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying, Melly, I saw you put your hand up first. Are you asking who was the motion and who was the second? Okay,
Yes,
so
please.
motion was made by Scott Reeves, seconded by Tom Buchanan. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, so passes unanimously. So congratulations to Stratton. Good to go.
Before we move on, do we have a list of variances that have been issued?
Should.
At least
I
in
can-
recent history.
Yeah, I can pull together everything we have. I can, if you want, I can set up like a subheading on our webpage that just lists all existing variances.
I'm interested in what the restrictions are
Okay, I can pull together, everything, I could find at least for the past, 4 or 5 years.
That would definitely help because I get a lot of calls from people coming into the state. And they say, well, JP, you can do this, Bolton, you can do that. It'd be good to have it. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, it'd be good for the mountains too, to know who else is doing these things, so they
Right.
can call on their own and
Right,
figure out how to handle it better.
right.
So as much detail as you can provide in terms of restrictions and limits.
See what I can pull together.
Next up, TowPro. Mike, I'll pass it to you
Okay.
for an overview, and then we'll go to Will.
For everybody who doesn't know, TowPro is a rope tow, portable rope tow. Everybody's familiar with it. They, basically they've been doing it for the public. You can buy one, put it in your yard or whatever, and go from there. Well, now Will's stepping into doing them for resorts, which, we have our own regulations, just like we put chairlifts in or T-bars or whatever. So they have a installation down at one of the snowboard shops that's come into question of, having an engineer approve it, and which we have in our code in Vermont. We want to license PE for Vermont. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now. I mean, we had to close them down a year ago because, it's basically not, it's open to the public. So that's where kind of the fine line is, where we come into play. Once you open to the public, it kind of goes by the different rules we have for construction and engineering. So we can let Will kind of talk about his product and stuff, and then we can go from there.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Will.
Yeah, just to give you guys a little background, we actually started in the resort space, and that's been our primary focus for our business for all 7 years of this project. The backyard system gained some popularity when we launched it via a Kickstarter campaign. And as a way of promoting it, we partnered with a popular podcast to give away a system. The podcast selected a winner at random, and they selected Darkside Snowboards, so we gave them the system as promised. And they installed it, and I gave them some pointers on what to do. It was my understanding at the time that they were private property, and that meant they could run it as they please. But as you guys pointed out to me last year, they are also a business, so they can't run it as a club, even if they are charging a membership fee and treating the rope tow like a club. Since the snowboard shop is a business, then it must be treated as a business, which I understand. So as far as our request today is for a variance specifically for the PE requirement, as we've had a number of engineers review our system on the resort ready side, which is the line of products we offer to resorts, and we have 20 of them nationwide that are certified to the CSA standard. And we're even branching into Canada now with the ANSI B77 standard in America, and then we're branching into Canada with the CSA. We did not need to pay these engineers to review the backyard system initially. And then when this project came up, we got a quote from them, and it would cost us around $20,000 to have the system reviewed and a PE to fly out from Colorado to come perform the on-site portion of the inspection. So for Darkside to have their system, which is of total value of around $10,000 up and running, we have the design and the components. We're happy to give to them and do the work to get it installed to meet what the engineers are requesting. But in order to get a proper PE stamp, it's almost $20,000 of work that needs to be done. Very cost prohibitive for this particular installation. So we are requesting a variance around the PE stamp, with the understanding that we will still install it to the ANSI B77.1 2022 standard. And if Mike or another person wants to come review the setup so that they know that it's in accordance with that, we will provide all of the hardware and things they need to make sure that it achieves compliance with the standard. And then more broadly, we have a lot of groups requesting to have demonstrations of our system, our resort system, which is much more robust than this backyard system. Particularly Mount Snow has reached out several times about having events with the rope tow. And we're just looking for a pathway to be able to set these up on a short-term basis and open them to the public, as we do in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and all other states on the East Coast that allow us to do it. Yeah, that's the whole story, I guess, at this point.
I have a question. Who is your engineer in Colorado?
SCJ Alliance, they
That's what I
recently
thought.
certified, yeah, they recently certified our system at Frisco Adventure Park, and gave it their stamp of approval. They've also provided us with a letter of confidence about our design that we can apply, generally speaking, to all of our systems because they all follow the same design. The matter of compliance really does come down to how it's installed, which we're getting very experienced with installing these things all over the country and the world now.
So the issue is more having the engineer come from Colorado, like he's already Harlan, Harlan is SCJ, right?
It's Tom, Steve Duran.
It's Steve
Okay.
Doral.
Yeah,
Steve Doral
Steve.
is the primary
But they've
engineer.
done the preliminary engineering is what you're saying, and the cost is more getting them out here to approve what they've engineered as for an acceptance test or as built.
Well, the problem is too, we require Vermont PE, so they've been, having a tough time getting a PE to approve it in Vermont, where any of our projects, they're all approved by a Vermont PE, so that's,
Okay, well,
The
this is
SCJ Alliance does have an engineer with a PE stamp in
they
Vermont.
do. Yeah, that was
Who does?
Harlan has one, as far as I know. Somebody at SCJ has one because I talked to them at ANSI. They have a Vermont. Yeah.
Why has that never come up before? Now
I think
that's
it's
always been the problem.
I think it's recent, maybe, that they got it.
I don't think it is. It's recent that we've partnered with SCJ. It's been
Okay.
about 2 years that we've been working with SCJ now.
I guess the one thing I know you did with SCJ is an analysis of your equipment to the ANSI code. I'd like to see that report. I know you did that with Steve. I'd like to see that, you compared your equipment as it applies to ANSI. I know you guys did that survey, so if we can, be nice to see that. And I know with my counterpart in Colorado, the unit that you installed and got approved took a lot of modifications. We're not tying off the trees. We got permanent anchors. We got cement platform with motor fits. So there was a lot to it that, that my counterpart did in Colorado, to approve this one with.
Just for full clarity on that, they did approve it to be installed and operated over the snow in sort of a minimal way. And then just recently, we've done a lot of modifications to make it more of a permanent installation involving concrete foundations and concrete foundation towers and things like that. So it shows the versatility of the system to be applied, to be compared to the standard in an over the snow with minimal anchoring is the goal. So he does want to see pull tested anchors on either end, but that was the minimal infrastructure that we needed to have.
I know the problems that you ran into is putting it on snow is when it melts. You got to adjust the drive, adjust the tension. That's where, Colorado said, we need a more permanent, we can't be out there adjusting it every time the sun comes out. So that's, kind of what we're after too,
Yeah, and all of the installations that we recommend for permanent setups where they're operating for more than a week, we're recommending people build platforms or install concrete foundations to accommodate for that, to make sure that it has a consistent place to land on.
I guess the portable thing's what concerns me. That's, okay, yeah, it doesn't hold, you just punch in another stake, or the snow melts, okay. So I just have a concern about the portable deal.
Understood. The portability aspect it's a service that we've been able to provide for many different groups over the last 7 years. And it's a short-term service, obviously. If we're installing over the snow, we're not recommending people install over the snow for the entire season. But it is a service that is a good chunk of our business. And at the moment, we have no way to provide that service to anyone in Vermont.
Question that I would have, and I guess, Mike Harrington, this is more from the state level. How do we regulate this? I look at this as like, if we're looking at a temporary device, do we look at this like a carnival ride that's coming into the state? And what are our requirements? And then what is our inspection process? Obviously, this is, like if Darkside technically were to put this in, do they now get a registry number from us and they have to pay the fee due for the length of this rope tow? And how would we regulate this to, if we do this variance, how would we regulate it to make sure that somebody's getting their eyes on this before it starts? And what would the fee be and how do we cover the costs and all that, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think those were kind of my questions of, we're talking about permanent versus portable.
Right.
It sounds like in some cases, these are installed for maybe a week or two in a lot of locations. But in terms of the one business here in Vermont, it sounded like a all winter long type of desire. So that's more of a permanent installation. So a lot of questions there. I don't necessarily have the answer off the top of my head. I may, Dirk, if you have anything you want to add at this point, otherwise we'll go to Tom.
I just want to make a quick comment in response to what Scott said. To my knowledge, our guiding statute, our rules, our code don't really address temporary installations. And what Scott's saying is this more like a temporary ride, like an amusement ride, which would be regulated by the Secretary of State's office. And, the Secretary of State's review process is really, they just, to my knowledge, all they do is they look to see if someone somewhere has inspected the ride, and they look for insurance, but there's no actual physical inspection process like the one that Mike and his folks do. So is it a ski lift subject to our rules, or is it an amusement ride if we're talking about a temporary installation? That's a good question, and I don't really know the answer.
I mean, we do a lot of, here's one we just finished 2 weeks ago with Cochran's. They spent the money, did the surveying, spent all the money on engineering, and we just did acceptance tests. So, so just let you, this is what it should look like when we.
But is that a temporary or permanent?
Permanent.
Right. So I think that's the question,
Right.
right? Like when we're talking about these more temporary solutions.
Uh-huh.
Tom?
As usual, I've got a lot. I'll start out by saying that I like the idea. And I would really like to get to a yes today. I'm not sure if we're going to do that, but if we could, it would be awesome. I'd like to see how the thing functions. I'd like the state to get some experience with this so that maybe in time we can build a piece into our regulations that will support temporary installations. Good to hear that Mount Snow is interested. I see a general use of this thing at other resorts or events of some kind. So I'd like to get to a yes. Questions I have though. First, what time frame are you seeking for a variance? Is this for just the remainder of this year, or is it for several years?
I think along those, like the one question I have too is it's usually it's not the manufacturer that usually seeks a variance, right? It's
Right.
the mountain or the user. And so
Right.
like this is a little different.
Yeah, we addressed that at our last meeting where we talked with TowPro, and we said that we thought this should be a dark side application,
Right.
not a TowPro application.
Right.
So is there a time frame for the variance, and is TowPro the applicant?
I would say that I'm spearheading the project as a favor to Darkside. I'm not the landowner, I'm not the operator, but I would be doing everything in my power to back up the giveaway I gave them, which has yielded, nothing for them at this point, as a way of making it right after years of it not being right. So
Would you be okay with a 3-month variance as a trial?
I would love to get a trial in front of you guys so that you could get some experience with it. Yes. Whether it's giving Darkside a 3-month variance to show that they can do this without me holding their hand the whole time, or if it's just we set it up at the trade show and you guys can come look at it. We have a demo unit that's a 15 horsepower that we bring around with us to different states. Anything that would give you guys some experience so you can gain confidence in how we set up our systems and the way they're used, because I believe, and our statistics and track record shows us, these are extremely safe systems, and it's built in a way that it's almost foolproof as long as you follow the directions in the way we've prescribed in our manuals.
Okay. You still need the oversight of an engineer.
And we have that with SCJ Alliance. Yeah, we have that with SCJ Alliance.
So did the SCJ Alliance guys approve these acceptance test procedures? Did they write them and approve them then?
Yeah,
that's good.
I'm not hung up on the Vermont engineer piece of it at all. If there's a legit engineer who deals with lifts and get an approval there, I think that would be okay to get us going with this thing. Then maybe we would have Vermont engineers take a look at it on their own and come up with their own standards. I'd like to get it in the ground and see how it works.
The question I had there too is how realistic is it to have an engineer inspect it for every temporary solution, right? It's very different, I think, if you're talking about a permanent year-round solution versus something that's up for a couple of weeks. If we're requiring each of those applications to have a Vermont inspector.
Well, that's where you get into the amusement park issue. They do require an engineer or somebody level 2 and above with insured liability and not the owner operator to inspect it. And then after that, every time it's set up, it's required to be inspected by the owner operator.
Right.
And then inspected every day by the owner operator.
Yep.
And if we're willing to do that with Ferris wheels and upside down spinny things, I think we should be able to.
Well, like in New Hampshire, they inspect every setup. Every time the amusement goes from point A to point B, it's inspected again. Full inspection.
But Vermont doesn't have amusement park inspectors, correct?
No,
We're just ski lifts. We don't have inspectors specific. They do both amusement park rides and ski lifts, right? New Hampshire.
Right. Yeah.
In New Hampshire,
We just
we
let the
have
owner operate.
the system is inspected once per year at the very first demonstration, our demo unit, for example. And then they granted us the right to use it within its designed operating parameters, which are outlined in the SCJ review. As long as we set it up within those parameters, every time we set it up, then they do not require that they see it for the rest of the year. But at least once a year, they do want to look at it.
What state?
New Hampshire.
Question about your maintenance manual.
Mm-hmm.
The checklist there says that the anchors will be checked weekly, but the acceptance test that we have, that you gave us also, says that they'll be monitored on a daily basis. Are anchors is your checklist every day for anchors, or is it?
That checklist is specifically for over the snow installations. If it is a permanent installation, or if we've had pre-established anchors in multiple locations for one system to be used in multiple locations, then the states that we've installed systems at have only been required to have a pull test once per year.
But on snow requires every day.
I would say that you would visually check every day and pull test anchors once per week.
So we talking too, say if you went from Stowe to Killington, you're going to do the setup. You would have your own team.
Yep, and I carry with me a digital dynamometer that's calibrated from NIST, and I pull test my anchors, my first step, and I set up all my rigging. All my rigging has a factor of safety of 6-to-1 for the load it will be under, and we set up our system, which has been reviewed by the engineering team at SCJ.
I guess I'm still, I don't know if we have two different issues here. Do we have I guess, a permanency issue and then a temporary issue? And I guess, if we're going to say these are going to be permanent installations, I think you got one set of rules, and if it's going to be a temporary, can we set up something, and Mike, I'm thinking of you, do your inspectors go out and look at these things before they can be used? Do we say they can only be up for X amount of days to be considered temporary? And if they exceed that, then they have to go through a permanent program to get engineering or whatever. I mean, I'm still trying to figure this out. And is there a fee? Because I'm just looking at, how we're going to pay our inspectors to go out and look at it. So is there a fee when they go out for an inspection and you can get a temporary permit? And I mean, I don't know if this is the road we're going down, and if Mike Nellis, you feel comfortable going down that road or not. I just, my mind is always, I don't want to get too far away from what our guidelines are for installing aerial tramps, which right now we're requiring a Vermont state PE to sign off on this stuff every time we do something. So, if I don't want to get a variance from that. However, I think if it's a temporary thing, there might be a way to work this. I don't know. I'm talking out loud here. Hoping somebody else comes up with something.
The permanent ones, I think we have to stay with our plan. I mean, because you're dealing with small ski areas like Cochran's, a Scutney, that spent the money. These areas don't have any money, and they spend all the money to do the engineering for a permanent one. That should stay permanent, and then we can work something out for the portable ones. That we have SCJ come up with some standards that we can inspect to. You know what I mean? You come to your resort, you set it up. Okay, we have some guidelines to inspect for the portable ones. If we did something like that, and then a fee, and
We'll go to, I know Tom's got a couple more, and then I see Joe has his hand up. So Tom, maybe to you for a couple more.
Okay, so my thinking is call it a temporary, and we have the ability now with our rules to issue a 3-month variance, which will get them through the season and give us a chance to look at it. So that's the way I'd handle the permanent versus temporary. 3-month variance, and then they can come back with data. I think there might be more concerns than just the EE stamp. So I looked through our rules and also the ANSI. And the first thing I come up with is all exposed AC wiring over 120 volts shall be installed in a UL approved raceway. Is that happening with this lift?
UL approved raceway, meaning within the controls terminal, like within the electrical box cabinet.
That's not the way I'm reading it, but and the reason I'm not reading it that way is it cites to the NEC 70 standard. My concern here is that we have electrical wires just laying on the ground or buried in snow or wrapped around trees where there are sharp edges and water and machines.
Most of these times they're coming off the hydrants.
So specifically the emergency stop gate controls wire. So this is our emergency shutoff, which is a gate that has 2 vertical posts and then 2 strings of wire strung between those posts, one above and one below the rope, encapsulating the rope as the standard calls for. So yes, our current methodology in the temporary setup is to lay that wire across the ground, across the surface of the snow, as we do not have the ability for temporary setups to dig down to the earth, lay conduit, and put that in. So that would be the only way we could set those up in a temporary fashion. On a permanent fashion, the voltage on that wire is 24 volts DC.
Well, we got 240 too coming from a height. Usually they use snowmaking hydrants. So you got that line laying on the surface on the snow coming from a hydrant over to his drive.
Yes.
Okay.
So
that big wires, 24 volts of safety system. We're talking about the power that powers the motor. Right? You got this big line.
No, I understand now.
Right. There's 2 different things there.
That SO cord could be stood up on posts if need be. in a temporary fashion that could be done rather quickly with strain relief clamps on each post to hold it up off the snow if that's what you guys would require. That's feasible to do. When I'm powering our portable system, I'm doing it from a generator that I bring to the site a lot of times. And my preferred method of installing is I have my 16-foot V-nose trailer with everything for the lift, including the generator in it, and the snowcat pulls it to the top of the site. And then we deploy everything from that, meaning that the power cable and the generator are encapsulated within the fenced off area at the top, meaning no skiers or snowboarders or public can walk in between the generator and the drive unit. And that is how we usually set it up in a temporary fashion. There are many ways to set it up temporarily. We have powered them from fan gun terminals and other available 480 volts or 240 volts on the side of the trail. But in any case, we can always adapt the way the power cable is managed to ensure it meets requirements. If there is some other version of cable that's required that you use for fan guns, which are mobile snowmaking fan guns, I would think we could just copy what they do because we use the same style power and same amperage for them.
An interesting analogy. I like it. That's one that I noticed that's a concern, and the standard that's cited to is NEC 70. So I would want to see it conforming to that, or you would need a variance from us for whatever the alternative might be. The next thing that I saw that was of interest, are snow skates going to use this?
I've only had snow skates and snow bikes on 2 occasions each out of the hundreds of times we've set up rope tows that I know of. But they don't have to be required to use them. We can prohibit them from using the rope tow if that's going to enable these to be opened to the public.
That would be another thing. Right. I think that's another thing you would have to look at. And I don't think that would be a hang up for us. But when you're asking for a variance, you would have to ask for a variance for all of these things together. Next one would be night operations. ANSI has a whole package of lighting requirements. Is this being used at night?
Specifically at the dark side installation, yes, I know they would like to use it at night, and they do have ample lighting all around that area anyway, just so people can see and they can utilize the terrain park features the way they want to. So I'd be happy to review their lighting plan and make sure it meets the ANSI night riding requirements and make suggestions for them to ensure that that happens appropriately before it becomes open to the public.
My concern is that the operator should be able to see clearly the entire length, and the user should be able to see the track. The ANSI standard is very specific. I don't think we need to go that far. But again, if you don't meet the ANSI standard, but you meet the reasonableness of use standard, you would probably have to vary that as well. Next one I have is 1 or more persons trained to provide first aid at the basic life support level, plus access to emergency care. Is dark side planning to have somebody there with that skill level all the time this is operating?
That is not something I could provide a definite answer to. That is not a requirement that I've had to meet for any of my clients. Obviously, it's up to the person operating to have the necessary first aid people on site, obviously. So I haven't dealt with that specific requirement before myself.
So that one is one of our rules. It's also an ANSI rule. It's at 6.3.2.1.4. So if that doesn't happen, we would need to waive that as well. That's one that I would be uncomfortable waiving. We have a rule that requires structures closer than 100 feet to have fire notification devices. I assume this will be closer than 100 feet to store.
Actually, I think it is just beyond 100 feet from the structure. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it does feel like it's a bit longer of a distance. But
okay. ANSI has a whole lot about anchors. One that I noticed particularly was that they shall be supported on sills or other supports. Doesn't sound like that's happening over snow.
Anchors shall be supported on sills
or other supports.
What is that? I'm not familiar with the terminology of sills in that scenario.
Neither was I. I can find it and read it to you. Point 1.1.6.3 anchorages is the title. And then all structures shall be supported on sills or other supports that, however temporary, are capable of carrying the loads imposed by structural and machine elements under static and operating conditions without shifting or settlement that will impair the operation of the tow.
So that is referring specifically to concrete foundations, sounds like.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's
no.
I don't think it specifies that.
Yeah. No, I didn't know what you're saying. Kirsten, any
Oh,
shed some light on that? I
No.
figured-
oh, no, but I hadn't gotten that far because I had a question about this first aid thing. I don't think that first aid means you have to have somebody on site. It just means you need to have somebody available. I could be wrong.
I think it says on site.
Available at all times.
Right.
Ready access to first aid, emergency care. It doesn't say on site. So I mean, I would say as long as you have access to it, there's got to be other small areas that have like one lift or I know I've heard this discussion before with somebody, and my understanding is the interpretation is you just need to have access to it. I could be wrong, but
I would expect the person to be there, and I would think about ski patrol. I don't think we have operations that don't have some form of ski patrol.
No, almost everybody has at least, somebody with basic first aid on site.
Right, like a basic ski patroller who can stabilize
Right.
while waiting for.
Or even some managers are trained, have the basic first aid so they can.
So it would also require one lift attendant. It has to
At a
be at least
minimum.
16 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we always prescribe the same thing that ANSI calls for. If you can see, and it's within 800 feet of length, if you can see the entire rope lane and have visual check on all components that the person would touch and the person's ride up, then you can get away with one person operating from the top is usually our prescription. And if it's longer than 800 feet, it's required to have two people.
And then that person at this installation would be dedicated to that job, correct? Wouldn't be somebody who's riding and lapping.
Right, correct. It would be someone standing at the top consistently. This operation in particular is less than 200 feet long. I think it's 120 feet. So you can even hear audibly without yelling top to bottom.
Joe.
I just had a thought on facilitating the registration for a temporary installation. Would it be possible for the owner of the unit, be it TowPro for ones that are moving around or the mountains that want to move them around their own area, you register that unit for its longest possible length and have it inspected in its worst possible installation, so worst anchorage, steepest slope, etc. And that be inspected by the Tramway board. And then if an area wants to move it, have possibly the inspector like observe one move and be, yes, I'm confident the crew can safely move that, but they still pay their fee based off that longest length.
I think that's where I'd like to go with this eventually. That gets ahead of this installation.
Yeah, I think it also the piece to me, if I'm kind of picking up the broad possible utilization, right, is cost either for a permanent or temporary, but owned by an in-state operator, right? So like if a mountain buys a unit and then uses it throughout the year in different locations versus, you know, is TowPro themselves coming to Vermont and doing a demo or setting up an exhibition where, again, they may only have it up for a couple of days during that exhibition. Do we treat them the same or different in terms of, you know, cost for inspection and or, you know, by feet of line? So that would be, those are the couple things that are rolling around.
I think if we had some, you know, they're using a SCJ engineering firm, if we had some good guidelines from them on what they want to see for each setup, you know, that engineer, this is how they want them each setup, we have something to go by. And same with the installer.
Yeah, and then just to get the conversation about multiple locations at one mountain, what we've devised in Colorado would be, because Copper Mountain has been asking about this specifically, they would pull test and do an ANSI acceptance test on each location at the beginning of the year. So we would move the system over the course of a day or two between each of the pre-established anchor points and pull test each anchor point and set it all up and show that it's compliant in each location with different ropes if they're different lengths, and show that once per year at the beginning of the season each year. And then they would be allowed to move it wherever they want throughout the year, as long as they, you know, give ample notice that it's being moved.
Within the sites that have been inspected.
Oh, yes, exactly. Only the sites that were inspected. Yep.
Be a lot more comfortable with this if it was in a real resort with
Yes.
experienced certified lift inspectors or lift
Yep.
mechanics.
We are working on attracting those clients.
Well, but I think to the point of today's conversation with Dark Side, right, that's a different situation.
Right, so it's a very different situation. And I'm willing to let a little bit slide here just to get this thing going so we can support a local business, and but I don't want it to be dangerous. And there are several of these issues that really need to be tackled before we say yes.
I think we got divided again from permanent to portable.
Mike, you've been out to the Dark Side location, right? And you saw their setup.
Yeah.
I mean, other than it's not compliant with our current procedure, were there safety concerns that you had in the way that it was?
But yeah, the way it's anchored, it's, you know, doesn't meet the, you know, the ANSI code, the way it's set
But I
up.
mean, were there glaring? like,
Yeah,
concerns that you
sure. I guess, but that's where I think the division between permanent and portable.
Sure.
Portable, there's a little leeway there, but you know, permanent, I
Right.
mean, there's.
Is their structure permanent? I mean, is the Dark Side
No.
site meant to be permanent?
Intentionally, it was because we put in a tower at the bottom with a concrete base to it that serves as the return tower essentially. And then at the top, there's a wooden platform that keeps the drive unit in consistent place so that no changes in snow levels will move it around. And there are fixtures on the return line to hold up the sheaves in the return line up in a permanent way. And yes, it was tied to the tree as its top anchor, but that could easily be changed to a concrete block behind the tree. And that wouldn't be a showstopper for us to switch that over.
I approach it from two different perspectives right now. First, historically, we go back to the 50s, 60s. There were all kinds of rope tows and hanging devices and weird lifts being created. And the legislature was concerned that number one, the public would be hurt. Number two, the operators would be hurt. And number three, injuries would tarnish the industry and prevent its development. That's why we exist. Protect the riders, protect the industry, to protect the workers. The workers piece is why it's here, I think, Department of Labor. So anything we do needs to respect those three things, and I think we can make that here. The second place I come from is I was appointed as a public representative by a moderate Republican governor who is a little bit libertarian, who really wants to support businesses in the state. And I support that kind of an approach. So can we find a way to make this work for the business and in general for the public? I feel pretty good about this kind of an installation for a 3-month test. We'll probably support a variance with a 3-month test if our inspectors are able to say that it complies with safety elements.
The question I would have, under using your possible suggestion as a starting point is, if we did a variance, would there be specific guidance under that variance for our inspectors, right? I guess that was kind of my point. Even if they get a variance for the various pieces of our rules and ANSI, were there other safety concerns that made them feel like the lift in its current structure was unsafe in any way? Versus does it conform to every piece of regulation? And do we, I'd probably want to hear from Mike or a member of his team who went out there and looked at it and said, I'd be okay with a variance if they did X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever, if we could get to a place on appropriate lighting, if there was a concrete block anchor instead of a tree anchor, if there was, whatever, I'm just picking random things.
Right. I think I'm with you on that. I'm wondering if a meeting with the site visit makes sense.
Well, I'd like to see, we got SKJ engineering involved. We need some guidelines from them. They're supporting this unit. So if we have some guidelines from them, then we can go to the dark side and say, okay, does it follow this, this, and this? You know what I mean? They're signing off on his engineering. I need that engineering to be able to go look at his lift, say, okay, this is okay, this isn't. You know what I mean? I'd want some guidance from the engineering firm.
Is the lift set up right now?
No, they've taken it down since they were instructed to by you guys. Hasn't been up since.
What would it take to set it up so Mike can look at what your design is now and compare it to what his engineer wants to see?
If we have a pathway to work towards some sort of progress here, then I will invest the money it takes to update what we've identified on the system from SCJ's minimal review so far without us paying them. I think at that point, we could show it to SCJ via video, and they could confirm that all the changes that they have requested are in place. And we could get them to review this specific design, not part of our general design, but to review the specifics of this design and give us the okay from that perspective. As far as a general acceptance test procedure, we have that already from SCJ. We know what they're going to ask for. So I can identify all the things on it that I need to change on this system to make it compliant from their level, because when I installed this system, that was not the background we had from SCJ. We've changed our wiring diagram. We've changed a lot of things mechanically just to make sure that it meets every possible interpretation of ANSI.
I like that approach in that you're having at least some level of review by SCJ of the site setup, right? So even if it's over video or if they have some type of diagram set up, again, but something that says, okay, in this type of use circumstance, this is what we would recommend in terms of setup. I'd feel good about potentially considering a variance in that case. But I see Scott has his hand up too. Scott.
Where's the dark side in all this, and who's representing the dark side right now? Is somebody on this or are you, Will, the only person here?
I'm spearheading this for their sake because they're not familiar with this process and I'm still learning too with respects to the Vermont Tramway Board. But in my experience over the last 7 years, like this is how we get stuff done. We have to prove to our customers that we can do it. Our customers are in a lot of cases not familiar and very green to the industry because we're opening up new places for skiing and snowboarding all over the country that haven't been able to do that before.
I get that. And I guess, again, I'm going back to the accounting string here. So we're taking up an inspector's time. Normally, we do that on behalf of a registered resort that's paid a fee due. So right now, we're going to take Mike's time or inspector's time. We're actually taking our time right now for an organization that's not even a member of our organization and has paid a fee. And does anybody else have a problem with this? Ski resort operators that, we're funding this right now. So you see where I'm getting at? It's normally on behalf of a ski resort. Like if I wanted to put in your product, I'd be railing with you saying, hey, I paid my fee due. I want this. And now we've got this outside entity that wants to do this that isn't even here representing, saying that, yeah, we're going to have the person with first aid. Yeah, we're going to have trained personnel. Yeah, we're going to pay a fee due.
One thing
So
we
I
could
guess
do
that's where
back to
I'm
that point.
having a
Yeah.
problem with this a little bit.
Well, and I think to your point, I mean, one of the things we could do is just get an estimate from Mike of staff time, whether it's you or another
Yeah.
inspector, and then we can figure out so it's at least a 1-for-1
Right.
reimbursed rate, right? Then we can, on a bigger scale, we can talk about whether it's part of the fee due or again, we're charging.
Right, if it was permanent.
If it's permanent versus temporary, is it a one-time
Right.
pay, as it's inspected versus a fee due? In this case, we could say, okay, it's gonna be 5 hours of a person's time, at this rate. And at least it's a 1-for-1 reimbursement.
Yeah.
That would be
And again, to Mike Nellis's point, they need some guidelines to go by so they even know what they're inspecting. Because, these things are fine when we're talking about it. It's only when something goes wrong that
Right.
we are going to get, taken to task to say, well, why did the state of Vermont Tramway Board allow this product and what specifications were we going by? I think we have on the lift and tramway side of things, we have a program. And so this is kind of new with this temporary thing. Because again, I'm still looking at this as like a carnival ride type deal. So I want to just make sure that we're doing our due diligence in this before we just say carte blanchely, yeah, we're gonna do this. And again, yeah, I am supportive, but with caution that we got to just make sure, because once we open this door, we got to be ready for it and right on it. So.
And as from my perspective as an operator of demonstration equipment, I would be happy to pay a fee per inspection. That's not something I've ever been scared of doing. I know you guys got to cover your time. Everybody's working here. We got to make it right for everybody. That makes sense to me. And I can't speak for sure on behalf of Darkside, but I've seen the level of commitment from them and their community to build this park, and I know they could come up with a fee to pay for their rate to have you guys come inspect. So I don't think that should be a concern. Just tell us what to pay and where to pay it. Like we're trying to make this community a better thing for these kids, basically.
Yeah, it's February or almost February. Winter is on its way out. If we're going to do this during this season, which I would like us to do, so we have the experience to think about it over the summer, it needs to move pretty quickly. So that's my first thought. We ought to do something if we're going to do something. Second thought is, I understand that it's not a resort requesting this. I think this conversation might be different if it was. And that bothers me a little bit because I don't want us to be protectionist of the resort resource. we're supposed to be representing the entire state, not just the industry. And I'd hate for us to be shutting down the little guys to protect the big guys. So that's how I look at that.
Don't worry, I'm not threatened by the dark side's rope. So that's very I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing from a procedure standpoint so that we have the right process in place to make sure that we're treating every installation the same, you know.
Where we stand with the town, do they have to have a permit for the town? I mean, we haven't talked, you know, before we get thrown in here, do they need a town permit or what's the town of Killington say? I mean, when we do rope tows, other places, we gotta do Act 250 and we gotta do this and that. I mean, just throwing it out there before we get too far. Just if there's another.
That gets to my concern about the state making it hard for businesses. What can we do to make
Right,
it easy?
yeah.
But there are all these other pieces that make it hard.
Yeah,
for
that's,
businesses.
I was just thinking about that. It's just, before we get indulged in this, but you know, is
Well, I
there?
would like to think they don't need an Act 250 permit. That would,
Right now.
potentially a
town
town
zoning.
permit. They're only, a town permit's like $250. It's not a huge,
Right.
huge deal, but
Yeah, 'cause I don't want us to be out there putting this in and the town coming by, oh, by the way, you didn't do this and this, so just some thought ahead of time.
Scott, as an
Yeah,
ops
that's
guy,
fair.
do you see a use? Sorry. As an ops guy, Scott, do you see a use for this at a place like Stowe or Mount Snow?
Oh, yeah, I think this, he got me thinking this would be great in our snowboard park. Instead of having the kids hike, we could have them ride this, So no, this is something that is sparking my interest. Will, don't knock on my door right now, but maybe we should talk in May when I start looking at capital budgeting. But no, I think I'm supportive. I just want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence for the process. And yeah, I do see this as a use for us. This could work.
I like it from an Okemo standpoint, just as a user. And that's one of the reasons I'd like to see a demo this season, so we can figure out how to go forward with it. And we then have the summer to tackle what kind of installations these are.
Well, on a from my standpoint, so I'm trying to balance, I think, Tom's eagerness to see it in place, some of Scott's concerns about making sure we do it right, making sure that our team has the guidance they need, right? So we're not just giving a variance, but then there's no guidance to your team to say, I don't know what am I supposed to be looking for then if it's not in a, to meet certain standards or expectations. So, what, if you were to go back to your engineering firm with this kind of the site map that you know of at Darkside and say, hey, what would your recommendation be to the Vermont, to this setup, right? So they could, whether it's a diagram or even just a bulleted list of here's how they should set it up in this circumstance. So it's as safe as it can be, at least for the next 3 months, right? If we gave them a 90-day variance, what's the turnaround time you think on some, I'm trying to debate of, do we give the variance and then that, or do we say, can you get them on the phone and get some specs for us that then the board could get back together in a virtual session in a week or two, review what the engineer has provided and potentially consider a variance at that time?
Yeah, we've already had Tucker from Darkside walk out measurements on everything. I've built a site map. I've sent it to SCJ. That all happened months ago.
Okay.
So they gave us a quote. The quote was $20,000. That's where we stopped the project because none of us can afford that. So the team at SCJ is very familiar with this setup already.
Yeah.
They know it all. So it's as far as do I invest 5,000 for them to take the time to review the details and get them up and running? I'm not sure I'm willing to do that, but fortunately, one of the parents of the kids who rides at Darkside all the time has pledged to help out with this project. So maybe in a week or two, we could have such a meeting.
But at a significant cost to you or somebody else, right?
Yes.
The good thing, you got one of the top engineering firms in the country and I've worked with these guys, so.
After our previous experience with Utah, Colorado, and Vermont, it became apparent to us there was no compromise available. We just went for the top.
Yeah, they're the best.
Hey, Michael Turconi, what would you consider to be an adequate kind of on-site inspection then? I mean, we have a checklist here of what SCJ or whatever their name is thinks is an appropriate acceptance test. So could we get either one of your guys or somebody local to come and review the installation and approve it? Charge
I
them
could do, yeah, I mean, I can do that part. I'm working with SJ, the engineering firm,
Yeah.
they're giving me guidelines on, anchoring is a big thing.
Yeah.
Top and bottom,
Yeah.
The safety system, how it all works.
Yeah.
The electrical, that's something I can do. So that don't bother me with.
How about if we give them have it set it up and have you do that inspection, and what would that take you, half a day? And then give them the provisional.
Good half day till we talk about things, but with having their guidelines too.
But
Right.
I guess that's where I'm not clear. Mike, are you talking about what they've already provided or?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, versus I think you're saying you want additional guidelines.
Yeah, I want guidelines from the engineering firm.
Well,
They're signing off
I
on
just heard that the installation acceptance test procedure was generated by the engineers for
Yes.
these, right? Well, yeah.
Everything
We haven't seen it.
Yeah.
submitted so far.
Yeah, that's
CJ
old
Origin.
stuff. The acceptance test is old.
Yeah, look at the date on the bottom, 2006.
That's not from us. We didn't form until 2018, 2019.
So that's why I'd want some updated guidance from them.
So do you,
Yeah,
Will,
yeah.
are you saying you do have some
I
acceptance
have-
test guys?
I have a brand new acceptance test procedure. We just revised it's in its third or fourth generation from SCJ. And we have user manuals for the resort ready systems. Again, the differences between the resort ready systems and the system that the backyard that Darkside has is it comes down to the gearbox and the belt drive and the size of the motor. Those are the differences.
Yeah, we got something in from Tom. I think that was from Tom in an email or
I think this is the
Nelia.
installation and acceptance test procedures.
Yeah,
Is that what you're looking?
TP15 it's called.
Yep.
Can somebody send that to, I didn't get that. I only have pictures of the mount.
It was
and-
It was in
Two
an
emails.
email from Nelia.
Nelia, yeah.
Yes.
You sent that yesterday, right, Nelia?
Yeah, there were two of them.
Yeah, on Tuesday.
Yep.
So the second one looks really detailed to me.
Am I on that email?
Well, so I'm looking at one right here from Nelia for tomorrow's meeting, but it only has me, Dirk, Mike Nellis, and Mike Terraconi on it.
Do you guys like me to share it on my screen right now?
Oh, wait, I had to open it all the way up. I got Tom, Scott, and Kirsten. Wednesday at 12:49 PM.
Mhm.
It was a zip file.
Right.
So Will, just a question for you. What I'm looking at here is installation and acceptance test procedures, TP15. It's got your logo on it, and the date on the bottom is.
There's no date on the bottom on mine.
Right.
There's a date in the title on mine, updated
Yeah, the
4/16.
4/49.
4/10/24.
Yep.
Says
That's a
authored by
slightly
Will
older.
Mayo, date 4/10/24.
Yep.
Is that approved? Is that what we're talking about that was approved by the engineering firm?
That
Thank
is
you.
the second version, and we're up to version 4 now from SCJ, but that is one of the ones SCJ has approved, and it's not huge differences between the two, so.
Could you send to Nellie or to the most up to date?
Yes.
Are you able to get that survey you did with them about your equipment as it pertains to ANSI? Can I get that report?
They sent us a letter of confidence, and then we have an example report from that they did for the Frisco installation.
Getting
In
an
bulk and
actual
over the
report.
snow. Oh, sorry.
And getting an actual report is what would cost you $20,000.
No, to review the backyard system, which is a different shape, it's smaller and has no redundant belt drives, no belts at all. Actually, it's a slightly different design, but that's the only difference is the drive unit. All the rest of our design is the same wherever we go. We're just pulling a rope tight between 2 points. But to get them to review that, do finite element analysis and everything on that, plus having their engineers fly out and doing
Yeah, they
it.
wanted to do a site visit too, so you're flying them from Colorado.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the majority of the cost, I think.
Right.
I'm concerned that we're stringing this thing along, that GoPro may spend a lot of money to do whatever we're talking about now, and then we come back and say, hey, we really don't want to do it anyway. So I'd like us to be comfortable saying we're generally supportive if we get the right documentation. But they'll have an ability to spend the money.
I think what would be helpful, it's certainly at the board's discretion. But if we could, maybe one thing that might help work this along is if the board's comfortable with us, with a variance and allowing us to take an administrative review of the materials that Will sends over, right? Make sure it's something we're comfortable with from a safety perspective that, that may prevent us from having to come back a second time. I think the question would be if from Dirk or Mike's experience, there is a red flag in there. We should just have the ability to maybe pull the board back together again and say, hey, we have this major concern. We need to make sure you're okay with it, or it's something we're not willing to live with here. But in all fairness to you, I think you need to know that as the right that oversees the program. But if you're willing to do it, contingent on Will providing the most up-to-date materials and the department giving a temporary sign off, we could do that, and that at least moves the ball down the field.
I'd like to do that. And my general guidance is safety versus dot T's and cross i's.
So I'm actually looking at the other board members to, although you're all wearing your poker faces, so I was hoping I could get some inkling as to whether or not we're in agreement or not. At the end of the day, I think we're gonna need a motion, but before I cut off conversation and ask for a motion, is there anybody that has any last minute thoughts, questions,
I'd be
concerns?
aligned with the direction we're going. But
Yeah.
Mike Nellis has to feel very comfortable in that he's got the right tools to inspect this. So I'd be looking to Mike to make sure he feels comfortable.
Definitely with the guidance from the engineering firm, I'd be ready to do a 3-month, demonstration.
So
if we
Will,
go-
just from my perspective, who would be doing the installation? Will, would you go down? Would you go over to the dark side, help them put it in? Then Mike would show up and do the inspection, then we'd be good to go?
As the person with the most experience at my company doing installs, I would be very excited to do this, to know that the confidence behind it is there. I've installed probably 100 rope tows.
Yeah, so
I guess
from-
Mike Nellis, I mean, the other component still is the dark side and who's staffing this. You require all of us to have trained operators, have documentation, a responsible person, everything that ANSI says. So we, it's not just the installation here, it's also the operation, because now does the dark side become an operator? And this is where I'm still a little hung up that they're not registered with us and they don't have any skin in the game yet. Will has all the skin in the game, but technically they need to demonstrate everything that we as operators demonstrate to you as well. And I would assume you're going to have routine inspections that you're going to show up like you do at our resorts unannounced and say, how's it going? You know, so.
I think
we would
I
monitor,
think
yeah, we would monitor the full
Tucker would be
installation.
very willing to.
May have lost.
Well, your internet cut out for a second there.
I think Tucker would be very willing. Oh, shoot. Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're back.
All right. I think Tucker would be very willing to provide 2 different employees so that whenever they want to run it, they can do it. And I would train them. I have training certificates that we've already developed. So I would be willing to train them on my own time to make sure they have the appropriate training and have gone through a couple of failure scenarios so that they can demonstrate their aptitude with the system.
I think I'd like to meet with the manager of Darkside and just go over everything we require, like we do with the regular, ski lift, just so, make sure he's comfortable. He might not want to do some of it, but it'd be good for me to sit down with whoever is in charge, GM or whoever, and just say, okay, this is what we expect. Are you willing to do it?
Yeah, and I'll get you in contact with Tucker directly if you want.
Yep, that'd be fine.
Well, what's for a setup like his, how long would it, what are you looking at for setup time? Is it a multi-day setup, 1 day?
90 minutes.
Okay.
And not that it's any of our business, but I would tell Tucker he might want to call his insurance company and tell him he's doing this, because his general liability could be a little different than it is today.
Absolutely.
And I think, in all fairness, I think that's kind of what we have to come, what I'm envisioning is Will sending us the materials, Dirk and Mike reviewing them, and then probably Dirk and Mike and myself sitting down and saying, what are the other things in this type of scenario that we're going to expect from the employer in this case? So again, they would have to present us with an insurance certificate, potentially, letting us know that they've talked with their insurance company and they've got coverage. I'm sure you've got a whole list of in your mind of what should be there. And again, I'm taking that from the standpoint of how do we make it work, not how do we block it, right? So I want us to be reasonable, but at the same time, making sure that, we're covered and they're covered, from a safety perspective.
If it was an amusement ride, they would have to have a certificate issued annually by the Secretary of State, $1 million liability insurance covering owner and operator for injured persons and property. And they would have to show compliance with Title 21, Chapter 9, which is workers' comp. So you're not asking for anything.
Right.
It isn't already in some other statute.
Just so folks are aware, I'm gonna have to leave here shortly because I have to testify over at the legislature, so I may have to leave you in the capable hands of Dirk Anderson. But just
I have to leave at 3.
Yeah, so I think we're close anyways.
Do you want to make a motion, or do you want to?
I'm happy to
language?
I'm happy to make the motion as the chair and see if somebody's willing to second it, that we issue a temporary provisional, operating variance for 3 months, next 90 days to on the condition that the department reviews the materials and that not only we sign off on comfortable from a safety perspective, but that the business owner operator is willing to meet any criteria or requirements that we have. And happy to share those back with the board, obviously, but
he's gonna have to
We're
get
giving the department discretion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got to get the town permit too, it sounds like, so.
yeah, we'll
We should check with the town.
yeah,
Right.
we can figure that out.
Okay.
I'm comfortable giving the department discretion in this one.
And I think what, in my mind, we'll just type up a list of, what we need to see, sign off from the town that either there is a permit and they've obtained it, or there's no permit. Sign off from the insurance carrier that they're covered, and then any other pieces that come up along the way.
I think we've given you a lot of guidance.
I think so. So that's my motion that, is contingent upon final approval from the department. But it would be a 90-day variance for operation.
Second.
Okay.
A lot of words, but I'll second.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I'll help Nellie, make it more succinct in the final version of the minutes. So we've got a motion from myself, a second from Tom, and a third from Mike Caraconi. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. None opposed, passes unanimously. With that, I may pass it off to Dirk to just close us out. I think you're gonna give us just a
Brief thing.
brief rundown of where we're at.
Yep.
And we'll go from there. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good discussion.
Yeah.
Great discussion.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you,
Will.
Will.
Appreciate
Thank you,
the time.
Okay, Mike, you want to just do a rundown?
Yeah, I'll close out construction first thing. So we ended up with one new chairlift fixed grip quad, one new carpet this year, one new rope tow, that just got finished January 10th, so the Cochran's were able to get that all approved and stamped, so that one's done. And we ended up with 7 modifications, some big ones, Mad River Glen, did that mid station, which was huge, we've done some Doppelmayr, rebuilds and stuff, they're over $1 million, some of these rebuilds. So actually, pretty quiet year really. But that's kind of what happened with construction. Talking about lift inspections, we have 208 lifts in the state. We had 190 some done before Christmas this year, just because of the early snow. Unfortunately, we haven't seen the budget, but there's a lot of overtime in there. I mean, the resorts were pushing us pretty hard to get, lifts done. So there's definitely overtime for all 3 of us, basically. But we had that many done before Christmas. Right now we have Plymouth Notch, Rockingham, and St. Albans that aren't inspected yet. So we still got a few. I've got to be at Middlebury tomorrow. They finally finished their modification too. So we're getting down on lift inspections. Talk about falls from lift. We're at 7 right now. One really bad one that happened earlier. Lady, 50-year-old woman, went around the bull wheel. Operator missed her. She fell. There was a net. She hit the framework of the net and then dropped another 20 feet. She had back surgery at Dartmouth. And that's almost 2.5 weeks ago. And she broke 3 ribs, punctured a lung. That was the worst one. The operator missed it. She lifted her feet right over the stop gate, which, we've all seen that before, and got stopped on the other side and fell out. So that one, we've done full investigation. There's ski patrol. I've been there taking pictures because I'm afraid we'll see that one again. But the rest of them are mostly kids falling out either at the load or unload, or, halfway up because, the parents were holding on to them and then finally dropped them. But we're at 7 right now. We've been averaging 10 to 13. Hopefully we don't have any more, but like I say, we have that one real serious one. So, one rope evac, that was just a little small one. The ski area was running off, the public on, their electric motor, pillow blocks hit the bed, so it locked it up. So they had the rope. So, but we've had just one rope evac. So, any questions on any of the, construction or inspections or
Any trends on the fallouts, people falling?
Yeah, it's a lot of little guys. The good thing so far this year, we haven't had any in ski school lessons. We've been averaging 2 a year. And, I know you guys are just writing checks to the parents. So far that's been really good. So, but mostly little guys. you know, this woman was 50, you know, she fell and she got hurt really bad. So, but most of the little guys have fallen 20 to 30 feet and they just bounce, you know, we've been lucky, you know, with the little guys. So anything else on that part? Okay, just talk about next summer real quick. It looks like as of right now, looks, you know, Killington, been working with Doppelmayr with them too. So that lift, I think, is supposed to start in April, the detachable 6-place chair. I think you guys already have a deadline for that. So, but they're still working on that. The other thing at Killington, they're replacing the cabins on Starship. I was dealing with Palma yesterday. It's 116 new cabins going on that line. There's some modifications that have to be done. We're actually pouring cement. I think Jeff said we got 13 towers we got to add cement to, concrete. So that'll be some helicopter time, and you know, we're anchoring into the foundation and just expanding it. So there is some modifications with in the terminals too because of the new cabins. But that's something that's coming along. Like I said, I met with Palma yesterday. You know, they're wanting to know what engineering I want and stuff. So that's moving right along. So Sugarbush, I think they already bought a new conveyor for next year. They already have it in house. So and Stratton's doing a new upgrade. That one and Doppelmayr upgrades. I mean, everything from the transformer in is brand new. It's well over $1 million project. So that'll supposed to start in April too. So, but that's about it for right now. I know Hermitage Club is looking at 2 new lifts. They've done really good down there. So that's going to come. It might come yet this year, but I doubt it. I think everybody's pretty well booked. So, but that's just some of the projects for next year or for this summer. And, you know, hopefully in the future, we'll have some more chairlifts. But that's all I have. If anybody has any questions?
Any questions for Mike? Okay, do we want to schedule our next meeting? I have that as other business after scheduling the meeting. What do you think? It's the end of January. Do we want to do postseason wrap up or
Good.
something in May, early May?
Yeah, might be the best. April, we got schools and closings and everything, so May probably be better.
Look at my calendar.
Hey, Dirk, I'm gone in the middle of the month, so I'm available the week of the 5th and then the week of the 26th in May. The other weeks I am not available.
Okay.
Wait for the commissioner and his schedule, or
Um,
I'm available the whole time.
okay, so the week of the 5th, that would be, if we met on Thursday, that would be May 8th. Does that work for people?
Yes.
Okay, let's provisionally say May 8th at 1 o'clock. And is there any other business? Any members of the public? Anything else?
I just had one quick question. When ski areas change ownership, Killington, for example, this year, I don't know when that happens. Does that impact anything to do with the tramway registration at all? I don't know if Mike
As long as
knows
we
that
get
or-
paid, I don't really care who cuts the
Okay.
checks.
Yeah. I didn't think it did.
I think we have to change the ownership status on something.
Okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure, I think we have to do that at least. You know, that's in our records that this is the ownership as.
Okay.
Plus,
don't think it's anything
Killington,
major.
Killington kept the same name. It's still Killington Pico Ski Resort Partners. There isn't like a new establishment
Okay.
per name per se.
Okay. Got it.
Well, hearing nothing else, we are over time, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Tom's looking at his.
So the only thing I'm looking at is I'm checking the governor's website right now, and Scott and Michael, your appointments are up in March. Assume you'll both want to be back here?
Think so.
Okay, good. I was just thinking about that meeting that happens after that. Good. That checks off that for me.
Thank you, Tom. There's an emotion to adjourn. It's been seconded. Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it. We will see you in May, and we will follow up with, I think we'll just send an email to the board about our progress with TowPro and Dark Side.
Good. All right. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.